Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? I see trees of green, red roses too. I watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
It's why an honor to get an award from the Rotary Club, because what they're really dedicated to is world peace, fighting disease, preserving the environment, education for young men and young women. And now, how could you not love an organization like that?
Today is an opportunity for us to appreciate and pay attention to the particular humanitarian benefit of science. You know, I grew up as a mathematician, and so that's like knowledge for knowledge's sake. This is not what this is. This is knowledge for humanity's sake, and I am very grateful to all of you for being here to celebrate that.
In 2000, I asked them if they'd like to think about doing a project in sub-Saharan Africa. HIV was raging throughout Africa, and Africa really has borne most of the brunt of this disease from the beginning of the HIV epidemic. So we went to Tanzania in 2002, and at that time when you would go into an African hospital, I know some of the doctors here who've been to Arusha, at Mount Meru Hospital, for example, you would walk in and there would be 4 or 5 people in a bed, most of whom were dying from HIV. There was very few people to take care of them, very few healthcare workers. Many of them had died of HIV themselves. So it was really a pretty devastating time, but we had social workers with us, and we ran some support groups and began to start our work there. And of course, over the ensuing years, the antiretroviral therapy became available in sub-Saharan Africa. And over the years, as we've traveled back, we've seen an incredible change in the number of people that are benefiting from antiretrovirals and are now living very productive, long lives, and are doing very well, giving back to their community.
Our climate is changing, all right? We're living in a warming world. We're living in a melting world, all right? And of course, sea levels are rising all over the planet. In the last 100 years, global sea level has risen 9 inches, all right? Just here in California, winters are warmer, all right? Snowpack comes later. It melts earlier, all right? Heat waves are longer and more intense, all right? And droughts are becoming more serious. So even today, without talking about the future, you're already paying for global warming in your air conditioning bill and various other adaptations.
Most of you know we have a crisis of homelessness here in Los Angeles. There were nearly 6,000 youth under the age of 25 who are living alone on the streets at the time of the January 2017 homeless count. There were over 55,000 homeless adults found. And the worst part of that is, those numbers fail to catch the full extent of the problem. I decided that if I was going to try to put together a county-wide directory, I needed something that the youth would use too, not just the librarians. In November of 2015, the WIN, which stands for What I Need, mobile app launched in the Google Play Store, the iTunes Store, and on our website, a web version as well. We now have over 12 categories of services on our app that you may search for. We connect adults and youth now, and we have over 1,800 programs, and we're still growing. We are in the process of adding Helping Hands, which is direct access to crisis lines available 24/7, and push technology, so we can send announcements of job fairs and winter shelter hour changes and more to any of our users.
We want to be able to use biological systems to make our chemicals and our materials and our food and our fuels with this elegance. So to circumvent this profound ignorance, you might be wondering, what is it that I have done? I circumvented this profound ignorance of how do you compose the code of life by using one of those beautiful tricks of nature, evolution. I evolve molecules in the laboratory. Yes, on my nights off, my students are there having yeast have sex, right? You know, you mix molecules together in the laboratory. This is what we do over at Caltech on Saturday night. And it actually works. You can create some pretty interesting things because evolution is an innovation machine. It works at all scales.
I have spent it's been about 13 years now working in a lot of the situations that you might have seen in the news, like directly on the ground, starting with spending a year in some of the worst hit areas following the Southeast Asia tsunami in 2004. And I had worked for a bunch of different organizations, and I was really the entire time for the first 5 years looking at the way humanitarian work was done. So we started in Haiti. We now have what we call resource centers. These are, a lot of people might have heard them, like maker space, co-working space, shared overhead, innovation lab, a lot of these things. We bring a lot of low-tech and high-tech shared resources to these populations. So we work currently in Haiti, Philippines, Nepal. Nepal, they just actually launched an incubator really focused around young Nepali women in tech, which is amazing. There's a whole group there that we're happy to host. It was the first 3D printing company in the country, and it's all really young Nepali women. And Greece as well. We've started to get involved in one of the largest crises that's facing us, of the refugee crisis.
So Finder is an interesting thing. It's not a very, people say, well, why would Jet Propulsion Lab be finding victims in rubble and earthquakes? And so it's kind of interesting to look back at how did we get started in this. Homeland Security and FEMA, responded to the Haiti disaster. There's this problem of having hundreds, if not thousands, of structures, some of which will have victims in them and some of them which won't, and they wanted something which they called the holy grail of search and rescue. They wanted to walk down the street and know which buildings have somebody to go save and which ones don't. I don't know that we've actually quite found the grail, but we've moved them a long way towards the goal of that.
Please join me in congratulating all of tonight's award recipients.